everyone, Tina here from Bittersweet Quilt Shop in Pinconning, Michigan. So welcome back to Jingle All The Way, session number 3. And in this session, we're gonna make this cute little ornament, and it looks like a little stamp, and it's got a little snowman on it. In our last session, session number 2, we finished this cute little bowl filler with a present. And it had a little "to" tag on it. Remember I told you I was going to put my friend's name on the back, so I placed my friend Jeannie's name on here, and this will be a little gift for her this Christmas season. And we also filled this with ground walnut shells so she can use it as a pincushion. All right, so they're really nice. They kind of keep them weighted. So this was our last session. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and start out with this one. And I'm going to tell you the products that you need for us to get started. First of all, you're going to need 2 5-inch squares of dark green wool. I did not cut mine. I did not pre-cut this down into 5-inch squares. You can go ahead and leave it the big piece of chunk that you had from the original size if you want. If you've already cut it down to 5-inch squares, it's perfectly fine, but you don't have to. There are 2 pieces though in this that you do have to pre-cut. One of them is the 4.5-inch square of cream, and the tan, which is a 3-inch square. Those have to be perfectly square because we're going to use those at that size. But then you also are going to need some black wool, your holly green wool, a small piece of red, and then another piece of cream. And then I always just use what we've already cut from. I don't have to pre-cut all of this down into the sizes that are listed in the book. Besides these 2 here originally, the 3.5 and the 4.5. No, I'm sorry, the 3-inch and the 4.5. Okay, because those have to be cut. But the rest of them, I can lay my components down and stitch from there. All right, everybody, here we go. Are you ready to build a snowman? All right, everyone, some of the other items that I forgot to mention, you also are going to need to have a piece of satin or silk ribbon, 22 inches long. This can either be 3/8 of an inch wide or 1/2 of an inch wide. You'll need 1 tan button, and then a little piece of orange floss or Valdani thread, pearl cotton. And we're gonna be using this orange just for the snowman's nose. You don't need very much, probably a piece that's about 15 inches long. Our pattern is gonna be on page 39 in the book, and it does give you all the materials requirement there. And then if you go to page 45, here we go, let's move over to page 45. Right here is our entire pattern for this piece. So I've already gone ahead and used my ultrafine Sharpie marker, and I traced out my snowman, my holly leaf, the hat, the berry, the scarf, and the stamp. So there are not very many components to this, and you're going to go ahead and cut all of those out, and we're going to go ahead and adhere each one of those to our pieces of wool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those out, and then I will put them on my pieces of wool, and I'll come back, and then we'll go ahead and start building our snowman. All right, we're ready to go ahead and start building our snowman. We have a few components, and you're going to find those on page, let's see, we started out on page 39, but now we're going to move over to page 45. On page 45, this is our pattern to make this little ornament. And what you're going to do is trace out a few things. I'm going to move my book out of the way. You're going to trace out the stamp and adhere that to your large piece of white wool or cream colored wool. You're going to cut out the scarf, the hat, the leaf, the berry, and the snowman. Okay, so these are all the little items that I've cut out. We are not going to put any stabilizer at all on our piece of tan, and you'll see why here in a minute. And then, of course, we've got this all adhered. And don't forget, we do not use steam at this point. All we are doing is taking our dry iron and moving it in up and down position and making sure that our stabilizer is adhering to the back of our wool. Once you're done with that, then you go ahead and you cut out on the line. And I did not cut this one out just to show an example, but the rest of these have been cut out. Okay, so I'm going to push this to the side for a second, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to start building our snowman. The first thing you're going to do is take your snowman that's already been cut out and pull away your paper. There we go. And when we position him onto our tan piece of wool, we're going to position him so that he's 1/4 of an inch, there we go, from the edge. All right, so he doesn't go all the way up. So this is what we're going to be calling building our snowman. So we're going to put him in because we're going to go around all of this all the way around. Once we adhere it to our cream, we're going to do a blanket stitch all the way around. So that's why he's not going right to the edge. He comes in 1/4 of an inch from the corner. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our scarf. So let's pull that apart. There we go. There's our scarf. We're going to lay that down just like so. And what we want to make sure of at this point, just want you to see this. See how long my scarf is? It's going over the area where I want to stitch. So I'm going to move my snowman up just a little bit more. I'm going to move my scarf over just a little bit more. There we go. That way he's not really in the way of when I go around the edge. And it kind of looks like it's going to be in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to snip that off just a little bit so I don't catch it later in this stitch that goes around. Kind of want it to line up. There's that. And then we're going to add our black hat. Let's get that on there. There's our black hat. And the last thing we have is going to be this piece here, which is the holly. The holly can go right here. And then we have our little red berry. You could also use a button here if you have a nice little red button that maybe is an antique button and you want to use it. It doesn't have to be the piece of wool. There we go. All right, everything is layered. I'm going to go ahead now and take my iron and I'm going to press this all down. And now this time I'm going to be using steam. All right, so let me get my iron on. We're going to steam it all in place. Now you could, if you wanted to, go ahead and add each layer, stitch it all down, and then add a second layer, stitch that down, and then keep building. But there really is no reason that you have to do that. And the reason I say that is, this way, if you want to take this and travel with it, let's say you're flying an airplane and you want to stitch on the airplane, if you take it this way, then everything is already adhered down, and all I have to do is come in and do all of my stitching, and I don't have to iron anything in place later on. It's all here. I can stitch it. I can start and stop wherever I want. So I'm going to go ahead and start stitching this down. I'm going to use a blanket stitch to stitch down my snowman all the way around here. I'm going to then come in and do a running stitch. Here we go, all the way on my scarf and on the holly and on the hat in black. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to finish this piece. So now I have my little snowman all stitched here, and I just want to talk about a couple of things here. These are stitches that I've already shown you in the previous videos, in video number 1 and video number 2. I did a blanket stitch on the snowman. I did just a little running stitch on his hat, on his scarf, and on the little holly leaf. And then for his little his little berry here, I did the blanket stitch, and I did show you that in the last video when we were making the little pillow with the present on it. So just always make sure that you keep the tension tight on this. Then I came in and I did 2 stitches here that are colonial knots for his eyes. But before I did that, you can either take a friction pin and just put a little dot where you want his eyes to be to make sure that they are even, first of all. If your friction pin isn't working well enough on the wool, you can go ahead and use your micron pin. But remember, your micron pin is permanent, so please make sure that wherever you place them is correct. So I did make a little mark for his eyes, and then also the curve of his mouth. I went and did that as well. Then I did a colonial knot for the eyes, but when I wrapped my thread onto my needle, I only wrapped it twice, because in my original one, I'm just going to bring it over here to show you, I wrapped it probably 3 times, and his eyes were a little buggy. They're just a little too large. So in this one, I made his eyes just a little bit smaller by only wrapping my needle twice with my thread to make a colonial knot. And as I did that, I was right here where the eye was, so then I just put a little stitch to make a little eyebrow, came back across, did a little stitch here. I did a stitch for the edge of his mouth, and then I just did the back stitch for his mouth, and then another one here. So that completed his face with the exception of his nose. And we're going to do a satin stitch on his nose right now. I do want to give you another little tip while we're doing this. This is my ball of Valdani thread, and they always have these little discs here, and on the disc it'll tell you what size of thread it is. So this is size 12. And then it also tells you the color number. This is 0575. That's the one I'm using today. When this falls off, I hate to misplace this, because if I run out of this and then I have to go purchase more of this, then if I don't have the little disc, I don't remember what color that was. So I'm just going to thread my needle here. So what I normally do is I'll take my needle and I will pop it through the back of my little disc and pull the thread through it. And then that way, when I'm going to be done using this color for the day, my disc is actually attached to my thread, and then I just wrap it around, and then the disc always stays there. And when I want more thread, you just pull it apart here, the disc always will stay right with the thread, as you can see here, and then I just pull the thread color out and it always stays with it. It's just an easier way of not forgetting what color this is. Another thing you can do as well is if you're buying a lot of Valdani thread, there was a time when I had my box and I had 4 balls of the same color because I had forgotten that I had already bought this color numerous times, but it's a color I use often, so it didn't make a difference. But if you have a smartphone and you have a notes section, make a note that says Valdani thread and then type in the colors that you already own, like 0196. Of course, black is number 1, and whatever other colors you have. That way it's always with you when you're at a quilt shop and you're like, oh, they have Valdani thread, because very few quilt shops have every single color of thread. So you might go to one shop and then to another, and then you'll be able to find the colors that you don't have. And then I always keep them in a nice plastic clear box. It is a craft box, and maybe I'll show you that at one of our other videos. All right, just a couple of tips for you. Now this piece of tan, oh, I'm sorry, we have to go back to finish his nose. All right, let's do that. I'm using a piece of variegated orange, and one end of this, as I'm looking at it, is lighter than the other. And I really want the nose to be bright. So what I'm going to do is put my knot, let's see, we're gonna grab the knot. We're gonna put the knot at the end that's the brightest color. So let's do that. I know how I wrap my needle. 1, 2, 3, pinch it and pull the needle while I'm pinching. Okay, now my knot is at the end of the bright color of the orange. All we're gonna do is a small satin stitch. So I'm gonna come in here, and the first stitch I'm going to make is gonna be a little higher next to his eye. That one is gonna be the longest stitch. So let's make it long. There we go. Just one stitch. There. All right, the next one I'm gonna make is going to be just slightly smaller than the one I just took. His little nose is not very large. It's like maybe 3 or 4 stitches. That is it. And then as I'm going down, I want his nose to narrow. Let me see here. I'm trying to make the next stitch. So you might have to really line that up carefully. Here, let's do this. Trying to see where my needle's coming up. There, that's not where I want it. There, that's where I want it. Okay, I'm going to make one last, and they just sit right next to each other. Let's see how that looks. I don't think his nose is long enough. I'm going to make one more stitch. And if I think that the end that is not, maybe it's not long enough, because I feel like it's not, I'm going to come back up here at where I started and make one more long stitch. So let me do that. And then maybe it'll look like a carrot, because right now it's not looking like so much like a carrot. There we go. Now it looks like a long carrot. So start out wide and go narrow. I only took a few stitches there. I think, what do we do? 4, maybe 5. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a surgical knot at the back and finish off that stitch. Now you're going to do the same thing for his top hat. You're going to do a satin stitch. So let's do that so you can see me do something that's a little bit longer. That little carrot nose was pretty small. Oh, of course, there we go. Get that out of the way. Let me load up my needle with my red. Here it is. Here we go. I always lay my flat side of my needle down and push my thread into the eye. And of course, I'm using a size 22 needle, and we talked about this in a previous video. Now, when I'm doing something small like this, I normally will jump to a smaller needle. And so a smaller chenille needle would be a size 24. All right, so now I'm coming in where the hat is, because he's got a little ribbon that goes across his hat. So I'm just starting in the little L space here in the corner. And I'm going to drop my thread over here. That's the first one. I'm going to come back up next to where I came out. There it is. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a satin stitch. And a satin stitch is when the thread lays right next to the other thread. And I think when I did this last time, I'm looking at this while I'm trying to stitch at the same time. I think I did 4 stitches of a satin stitch just to make it look like he had a red band across his hat. There we go. If you want it a little thicker, just add 1 more stitch. And you can always take your nails and kind of close them together and then use a little tension on your thread and make sure that your stitches are close. All right. Now if you, now this is a good example of a mistake. And that's okay to make mistakes because you can go ahead and fix them. See the gap that I have between this thread and these other 3? It's too wide. So now I've got to come in and I got to fill that in with another stitch. There we go. And you know what? It happens to everybody. I mean, it's okay to make a mistake. Just go ahead and fix it. Or leave it. You know, sometimes mistakes, you don't, you know, nothing. I have a saying in my store. Nothing, let's see, I'm trying to remember how it goes. I'm trying to stitch and talk at the same time. It's kind of hard. Oh, I can't remember what it says. I'm so sorry. I'll have to go back and look and see what it says. Let's see. Maybe it'll come to me, guys. I'm so sorry. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna stop doing that. I can't do two things at once, I guess. All right, so there is my completed snowman. All right, so now what we're gonna do, this is the piece of wool that's our stamp, and we still have the piece of a stabilizer on the back. What you're gonna do now is you're gonna remove this, oh no, I'm sorry, do not remove the stabilizer. I'm sorry, we wanna keep that on, because what we want to do is we wanna put some stabilizer on the back of this. So let me grab my stabilizer, and let me grab my iron because we need to heat the iron back up. So just a second, let me grab it because of course it fell to the floor. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I want a piece of stabilizer. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as this. Oops, let's not do it on the shiny side. Let's do it on this side. I want it on the paper side. I'm just like eyeballing this, okay guys? We're not gonna, you don't have to get real technical with this. I'm gonna take my pen. What we're trying to do is just cut out a piece that's going to cover the back of this. There we go. That's about the size we need. There we go. We're just gonna cut that out. It's better if it's smaller. It doesn't have to be exact, okay? It actually is a little bit better if it is smaller. There we go. All right. And then we're gonna take this and we're going to iron that to the back of this using dry heat. Here we go. And this up and down motion, and give it a little bit of heat. Obviously my iron is not quite hot enough yet because I just turned it on. But this little Alicio, this new one that just came out in the last year, is fantastic. It gets hot so fast. And also, not only that, it has an on-off button that I love. Because sometimes the old one, it didn't have an on-off button. So this one's nice. And not only that, I love how much this thing steams. Okay. Yeah, I think this is called the Alicio, let me see, M3 Pro. It comes in lots of fun colors as well. This is the one that I travel with all the time now because I can steam my clothes if I need to on the bed, like in a hotel room or wherever I'm at. Okay, so now this is very hot. I would normally let this cool for a few seconds, but let's see if we can get the stabilizer to come off and stay onto the wool. I don't know, guys. Let's see. There we go. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up. Oh, look at this. This is too large. I feel this is too large, you guys. I want this to be smaller. So what I'm going to do is come in here. I'm going to trim off just a hair. And I mean just a hair off from this. Let's call it a, scant. Because I don't want this to be that large. Because I want my stamp to show a little bit more. So I'm just coming in and just trimming the tan a little bit. I had not planned on that. Now I've only trimmed 3 sides. Ooh, this is a little wavy right here. Let me trim that. And I got to trim this side because I have to trim all 4 sides. Otherwise it's not going to look even. All right, there we go. Okay, let's lay it back on here. All right, see how nice and even that looks? I'm trying to make it so that I have room to come in and stitch around these little circle cutouts here. All right, so now what I need to do is grab my iron, turn on my steam, and steam that down. Now remember, this white piece, this cream colored piece, still has the paper on the back. That's really important, okay? Because if you steam this down now, it's gonna adhere to your wool mat, and you do not want that. All right. And what I'm trying to do is just steam so that the tan will stay onto the piece of cream. All right, now from here we're gonna let it cool. And now we're gonna take off the back of the cream piece. There we go. That's it. Okay, what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm going to come in, let me grab the original. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna blanket stitch with my cream all the way around the tan, okay? And then I'm gonna come back and show you how to put it onto the green piece and how we're gonna work it from there. Well, here you can see that I've gone ahead and I finished doing a blanket stitch all the way around the tan. And I'm gonna now take this piece. Now remember, on the back of this is our stabilizer. I'm gonna take my larger piece of green. This is my evergreen color. And I'm going to lay this down on top. And what I'm gonna do is I'm giving myself about 1/4 of an inch all the way around these edges. Now remember, I did this instead of cutting the 5-inch piece. All right. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my iron and I'm going to use some steam on this, and I'm going to steam this down. Now, one of the things I like to do when I'm doing something this large, see all these layers? If I can get this to stick well, I'm just gonna take it and flip it over like so, and then I steam it from the back. There we go. Because what I'm just trying to do is get the cream colored wool to adhere to this piece. And by using the steam, it's gonna help melt that piece together. And hopefully we don't steam up this camera too much. All right, so let's see how that looks. Let's flip that over. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna cut this out yet. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go around this entire piece. Now, in my original piece, I did not do a blanket stitch. I just did a running stitch all the way around in my cream colored thread. So I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way around this, and I'm gonna stitch the green to the cream with a running stitch all the way around. And let me get that done, and then we'll come back and we are getting close to being finished with the snowman. As you can see here, I've gone along now and I have stitched all the way around on the cream, attaching to the evergreen here. And hopefully you can see that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over. And what I've done is I've cut out another piece of stabilizer. It needs to be either exactly the same size or just a little bit smaller, because you don't want to adhere this and then it gets onto your wool mat, that's your pressing mat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this, here we go. You can also just put a couple scrap pieces on if you didn't have a big chunk like I'm putting on here. That would work as well. All right, so we're gonna iron that down. We're not using any steam right now, remember, because when we have paper, there's no steam. And when we don't have paper, we use steam. All right, so I'm just moving this around because I don't have to go up and down. I'm just trying to put a little piece on here. It's not gonna move off from this piece. Whoops, now of course it takes a hold of my iron. Okay, all right, so we've done that. And then what we're going to do now is this is the last piece of wool that I have. And you can see I've got a little chunk out of there. But I'm gonna take the paper off the back as soon as it cools. Let's see if it's cooled enough here. There we go. And got that on the back. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay it down on this piece of wool. I know it's a green on a piece of green, but what we're doing is we're covering up the backing where all of our stitches and everything are. And not only that, makes our ornament nice and weighty. Makes it a little bit heavier. All right, so I've got it together. I'm gonna flip it over like so. Now I'm gonna take my iron. Oops, I'm gonna turn the steam on. And I'm gonna steam the other piece of green to the back of the ornament. There it is. Okay, so I've got that steamed down pretty good. And you really want to make sure this is adhered because this is your final piece. So you want to make sure that that stabilizer is really adhered to the back of your ornament. Okay, I think we probably have it. Let's pull it over here. Okay, so now you've got all of this together. We're going to let it cool down a little bit. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim all the way around this. And I'm going to leave 1/4 of an inch of this green remaining. So I'm going to start cutting this, and I'm going to cut a straight line first. I'm trying to just eyeball it so that I've got a nice 1/4 inch all the way around. Make sure you go out here from this last point. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this all the way, all right, so you can see what it looks like. If you think, oh, this doesn't look very square, take it over to your rotary cutter and use that if you need to. But I think if you use your scissors, you'll be just fine. All right. There we go. Get that corner edge there. All right, now that I've done that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my smaller scissors and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to carefully just cut out a little bit of like a little oval on the ends here. All right, see that? Just go in. Don't cut out much because you're going to have to come back in here and stitch, okay? So I'm going to do this all the way around. That one doesn't look very good, so I'm going to come back in here and try to fix that. That's what's really nice about these Karen K. Buckley scissors that are for applique. They're so sharp on the end, and I can get into small little places and just snip out what I need out of that area. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to do that all the way around. Then I'm going to take my green pearl cotton and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a stitch, just a running stitch all the way around. Let me get the original. Here we go. It's going to look like this. See how I went in there? I just went in and did a running stitch all the way around. Now I've got a couple little fraying pieces right here. Can you see that? You know what? Make sure you don't cut your thread. And if you ever get a little bit of fray going on, especially if you have a looser weave of wool, you can use a little tiny bit of fray check and just put a little tiny bit on there. Oops, let it dry and it'll be absolutely fine. You don't need to douse it with fray check. Okay, so once you have done this all the way around, then you're going to go ahead, and what I've done is I just took my ribbon and I made a loop, and then I stitched that down, but I stitched it down while, okay, I should explain this a little bit better. I made the loop first, then I made my little bow, and I put the bow on this side, the loop is on the back, and then I lay my button on top, and I stitched through all of it at the same time. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can stitch through just the loop and the ribbon and then come in and stitch your button down. That's perfectly fine. All right. And guess what, guys? This is your little ornament. One of the things that I might do with this piece, if I was going to give it as a Christmas gift, I might take my fine, well, not this one, sorry, I want my micron. I would probably take my micron pen, and if I was going to give this to one of my children or my grandchildren, and I'm probably going to do that, I would come in here and I would date this, and I would put on here 2024 in the permanent marker, very, very carefully, okay? Or you can just put a 2 and a 4, whatever year you're making this, all right? And then I would heat set it with some dry heat. There we go. Put a little dash there, dash there. If you want, you could also go in and stitch that in, okay? And that's probably what I'm going to do. And then I would hit that with some dry heat just so it sets the steam. I hope you enjoyed making a snowman today in session number 3. It's a beautiful little ornament, and it doesn't take very long to make this at all, and it's a wonderful little holiday gift for anyone. In session number 4, next Saturday, we'll be making one of the larger projects, which is this little letter to Santa. We'll be doing a little bit of embroidery, a little bit of wool applique as well. And don't forget, we have a couple more weeks to go for Jingle All The Way. Thank you everyone for participating. Please make sure that you post your photos on 9 Patch a Day or on Bittersweet Quilt Shop's Facebook page as well. We'd love to see what you're making. And please always remember, be inspired.